The training gym in Manila was silent on Monday morning when Manny Pacquiao arrived for his preparation session. The fight against Mario Barrios was scheduled in 3 weeks, and all the world's sports media speculated about the legendary Filipino's return to the ring. At 45, many questioned whether Manny still had the same fire that led him to become the only octuple world champion boxer in history. The press had created a narrative of intense rivalry between the two fighters, especially after Mario Barrios' latest statements in American interviews. The young Texan of Mexican descent had commented that Manny was just a legend from the past trying to relive glory, words that echoed through Filipino media like a direct affront to the national hero. Filipino social media seethed with indignation, demanding that Pacquiao teach the American a lesson. Manny, however, seemed strangely calm for someone who had supposedly been disrespected. His sparring partners noticed he trained with the same intensity as always, but there was something different in his approach, a serenity that didn't match the hostility the media was trying to create. Freddie Roach, his historic trainer, watched perplexed as Manny worked the heavy bag with surgical precision, each punch loaded with purpose, but without the rage many expected to see. The press conference was scheduled for that afternoon, and journalists prepared for a spectacle. Everyone expected Manny to respond to Barrios' provocations with harsh words, perhaps even veiled threats about what he would do in the ring. Betting was booming, with many wagering that the psychological warfare between the two would increase exponentially after the meeting with reporters. What no one knew was that Manny had spent the previous night on the phone with his private investigator, a discreet man who always helped the champion better understand his opponents, not to find technical weaknesses, but to understand the human being behind the gloves. The information he had received about Mario Barrios had nothing to do with boxing, but had completely changed Manny's perspective on the upcoming fight. Walking through Manila's familiar streets before the conference, Manny reflected on how the media loved to create dramas where they didn't exist. He had fought dozens of opponents throughout his career, and had learned that the real adversaries were rarely those who made the most noise in the press. The most dangerous fighters were those who came to the ring carrying invisible weights, pains they didn't show in interviews, motivations that went far beyond belts and money. When Manny finally arrived at the press conference venue in the luxurious Makati Hotel, the tension in the air was palpable. Journalists from around the world were present, cameras strategically positioned to capture every facial expression, every gesture that could become a headline. But what would happen in the next few minutes wasn't what any of them had predicted, and would certainly change not only the perception of the fight, but what it means to be truly a champion inside and outside the ring. Manny entered the conference room with his typical simplicity, wearing only a white polo shirt and jeans, completely contrasting with the formal atmosphere the media had created. He sat at the main table unhurriedly, adjusted the microphone, and for a moment just observed the sea of faces before him. Journalists stirred, preparing recorders and cameras, ready to capture what promised to be an epic verbal confrontation between the Filipino and Barrios' provocative statements. The first question came exactly as expected. An American reporter asked for Manny's reaction to Mario Barrios' comments about him being a legend from the past. The silence that followed seemed to last an eternity. Manny looked directly at the camera, his eyes carrying an intensity that showed not anger, but something much deeper, a mixture of understanding and determination that disconcerted everyone in the room. Instead of responding with indignation or verbal counterattacks, Manny began talking about Mario Barrios in a way no one expected. He mentioned he had researched his opponent, but not as an adversary, as a human being. He told how he discovered that Mario had lost his father at 15, that his mother worked 2 jobs to support the family, and that the young boxer had practically raised his 2 younger brothers alone while building his boxing career. Journalists fell silent when Manny revealed he knew about the difficult financial situation Mario's family faced, how the prize money from this fight would be crucial for them to pay off the mortgage on the house where Mario's mother raised 3 children alone. Manny spoke about understanding the pressure Mario felt, not just to win, but to support an entire family with his gloves, exactly as he himself had lived in the early years of his career. The atmosphere in the room changed completely when Manny said Mario's provocative words didn't offend him because he recognized in them the same desperation he felt when young, the desperate need to transform anger and frustration into motivation to fight. Manny shared that he saw in Mario Barrios a younger version of himself, someone fighting not for glory, but for a family's survival. It was then that Manny made his most impactful statement. Instead of retaliating against the provocations, he was using the press conference to make a warning to Mario Barrios, but not the kind anyone expected. The warning wasn't a threat of destruction in the ring, but a reminder that, regardless of the fight's outcome, Mario should always remember who he was fighting for, his family, and never let fame or media pressure make him forget his true motivations. The room exploded in confused murmurs. Sports journalists, accustomed to trash talk and pre-fight provocations, didn't know how to react to this display of humanity and empathy. Cameramen exchanged uncertain looks, realizing the narrative they had prepared about a war of words was crumbling before their eyes. Manny Pacquiao wasn't just refusing to participate in the media circus. He was elevating the entire discussion to a completely different level. What no one in the room knew was that this was just the beginning. Manny's real warning to Mario Barrios hadn't been given yet, and when revealed, it would change not only the fight's dynamics, but both fighters' lives in ways no one could imagine. 3 days after the press conference that had left the boxing world perplexed, Manny made a decision that would surprise even his closest team. Without telling his trainers or promoters, he flew alone to San Antonio, Texas, where Mario Barrios was conducting his final training camp. The press had speculated about possible mind games, but no one suspected Manny was planning something completely outside the traditional professional boxing script. Manny arrived at Mario's gym during lunchtime, when he knew the fighter would be alone, taking advantage of working on specific techniques away from the spotlight. The gym was modest, located in a working-class neighborhood of San Antonio, very different from the high-tech facilities many world champions used. Upon entering, Manny heard the familiar sound of gloves hitting the heavy bag and saw Mario training with the same desperate intensity he himself knew well. Mario stopped training as soon as he noticed Manny's presence, initially confused and then visibly tense. The two men stared at each other for a moment that seemed eternal, the gym's silence amplifying the tension between them. Mario, sweating profusely and still breathless from training, didn't know whether to greet his opponent, ignore him, or prepare for some kind of pre-fight psychological confrontation. Manny broke the silence in a way Mario never expected. Instead of provocations or intimidation attempts, Manny commented on the technique he had observed Mario practicing, offering a subtle suggestion about foot positioning that could improve his power. Mario's expression changed from suspicion to total disbelief. His opponent was actually giving training tips just weeks before they would fight. The Filipino then asked if he could sit, pointing to an old chair in the gym's corner. Mario, still processing the situation's surrealism, nodded affirmatively. Manny began talking about his own journey, about how he had started boxing not out of love for the sport, but out of absolute necessity. He told about his mother selling gifts she had received to buy powdered milk, about how he and his siblings slept on a tiny room's floor, about the hunger that motivated him to train until fainting. Mario gradually began to relax. There was something in Manny's sincerity that disarmed any defense. The young Texan sat on the gym floor and, for the first time since beginning his professional career, opened up completely about his own struggles. He spoke about the pressure of being the family provider since adolescence, about how each fight seemed like a life or death matter not for him, but for his mother and brothers who depended on every dollar he earned in the ring. It was in this moment of shared vulnerability that Manny delivered the real warning he had come to give personally. But it wasn't a warning about what he would do in the ring. It was a warning about what he wouldn't let Mario do to himself. Manny had seen many young fighters destroy their lives and family relationships in the obsessive pursuit of success, and recognized the same signs in Mario. The warning was simple but profound. No matter the fight's outcome, Mario should never forget that boxing was just a means to achieve something greater, not an end in itself. The two men spent the next 2 hours talking as if they were old friends, not adversaries about to face each other in the ring. When Manny finally stood to leave, the entire dynamic between them had changed. They would still fight with all the intensity the sport demanded, but now there was mutual respect and understanding that transcended any artificial rivalry the media tried to create. Mario watched Manny leave the gym, feeling more motivated and, paradoxically, more at peace than he had been in months. When news of the secret meeting between Manny and Mario leaked to the press 2 days later, through a secondary trainer who had arrived early at the gym, the reaction was explosive and contradictory. Promoters for both fighters were furious, worried that the friendly visit could diminish public interest in the fight. Sports journalists, initially skeptical, began speculating whether it was all an elaborate mind game by Manny to confuse his younger opponent. Mario, however, surprised everyone by publicly confirming the meeting and defending Manny against accusations of psychological manipulation. In an emotional interview for a local San Antonio channel, Mario revealed that Manny's visit had been the most real and human thing he had experienced in his professional career. He admitted he had spent years building an aggressive persona because he thought that's what boxing demanded, but the meeting with Manny made him remember why he started fighting in the first place. Trainers from both fighters reported notable changes in the training camp's atmosphere after the meeting. Mario seemed more focused, but also more relaxed, training with an intensity that came from a different place, no longer from desperation or anger, but from a renewed and clarified purpose. Manny, in turn, trained with a youthful energy his sparring partners hadn't seen in years, as if rediscovering his connection to boxing's roots had rejuvenated him. The meeting's consequences extended beyond the boxing world. Mario's mother, Carmen Barrios, made a point of speaking publicly about how Manny had personally called her after visiting her son. She revealed, with tears in her eyes, that Manny had shared stories about his own mother, Dionysia, and how a son's success should never cost the relationship with family. Carmen expressed gratitude that went far beyond sports, saying she felt someone finally understood the pressure her family faced. Filipino media, initially divided between pride in their national hero's demonstrated humanity and concern about him going easy on an opponent, began changing tone when sports psychologists and former boxers commented on the strategic wisdom of Manny's approach. Some sport veterans observed that a relaxed and focused opponent on what really matters could fight better, not worse, becoming a more dangerous and respectable adversary. 2 weeks before the fight, something unprecedented in modern boxing happened. Mario Barrios posted a video on social media not provoking Manny, but expressing gratitude for being reminded that boxing, at its best, is about more than just winning. He spoke about being excited to show in the ring not just his technical skills, but also the values the sport had taught him, especially in the last week. The artificial tension the media had tried to create was replaced by something much more authentic and, ironically, much more compelling. Boxing fans around the world began to see the fight not just as a confrontation between two fighters, but as a celebration of what the sport could be at its highest level. Manny's shocking warning had transformed into something no one anticipated, a reminder that true greatness in boxing comes from how you carry yourself both inside and outside the ring. What many didn't know was that there was still more to come. The real test of Manny's approach's impact would come on fight night, and the surprises that awaited would prove his strategy was more profound and effective than anyone could have imagined. In the final 2 weeks before the fight, both fighters' training camps experienced notable transformations. Mario Barrios had incorporated into his routine elements Manny had mentioned during his visit, not specific techniques, but mental approaches the Filipino had learned over decades in the sport. Mario began meditating before training, something he had never considered before, and noticed his mind was clearer and more focused than ever. Manny, meanwhile, seemed to be enjoying the training process more than he had in years. Freddie Roach observed that the veteran boxer was taking more time to teach younger sparring partners, sharing stories about respect and sportsmanship between rounds. It was as if the act of reaching out to Mario had reminded Manny of what he loved most about boxing, not just winning, but inspiring others and being part of something bigger than himself. The dynamic in Manny's camp also changed when he invited several young Filipino-American boxers to train with him during final preparations. He told them stories about Mario's journey, emphasizing how important it was for young fighters to support each other rather than see every encounter as pure competition. Some sparring partners commented they felt like they were part of something historic, not just preparing for a specific fight. Mario's training sessions became almost spiritual experiences for those who witnessed them. He incorporated gratitude elements Manny had mentioned, starting each session by taking a moment to think about his family and community. His punches seemed more precise, his movements more purposeful, as if he had found a source of power that wasn't based on anger or desperation, but on love and commitment to something greater. As the 2 weeks progressed, stories began circulating about small acts of kindness between the two training camps. Mario's team sent Filipino food to Manny's camp, while Manny arranged for flowers to be sent to Mario's mother in San Antonio. These gestures, small in themselves, created ripples through the boxing community that had never seen such genuine respect between fighters preparing for a major bout. Medical teams for both fighters reported interesting findings during final health checks. Both men showed lower levels of stress hormones typical of pre-fight anxiety, while maintaining peak physical preparation. Sports psychologists noted this combination, relaxed mind with focused preparation, could result in some of the finest boxing both men had ever displayed. The absence of artificial animosity seemed to have elevated both fighters to their best possible versions. A week before the fight, an unexpected development occurred that surprised even those closest to both fighters. Mario requested to meet briefly with Manny again, this time opting to bring his younger brother Miguel, an aspiring boxer. During this encounter, Mario thanked Manny not just for changing his perspective on the fight, but for showing him how to be a true champion outside the ring. He mentioned that regardless of the fight's outcome, he planned to follow Manny's example of using his platform for positive impact. The transformation was complete when both fighters appeared together at the final press conference, demonstrating respect that was authentic, not performative. They answered questions about their preparation, their mutual admiration, and their commitment to giving fans the best fight possible. When asked about pre-fight intimidation tactics, both smiled and explained that real confidence comes from preparation and self-knowledge, not from trying to intimidate opponents. As fight night approached, the boxing world realized it was about to witness something unprecedented. Two fighters at the peak of their abilities, motivated not by hatred or grudges, but by mutual respect and desire to honor the sport they both loved. Manny's shocking warning had evolved into something beautiful, a demonstration that boxing's greatest battles could be fought between friends, not enemies. The MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas was electric on fight night. An audience of celebrities, dignitaries, and passionate boxing fans had gathered to witness what many believed would be one of the most peculiar fights in recent years. The usual pre-fight ceremonies had a different atmosphere, still intense and exciting, but without the malice or hatred that frequently characterized major boxing events. During the walk to the ring, both fighters displayed calmness that caught the attention of experienced boxing observers. Mario walked with confidence that came not from bravado, but from inner peace. He acknowledged the crowd, waved to his family in the front row, and seemed genuinely grateful for the moment. Manny's entrance was, as always, humble yet powerful, but those who knew him could see renewed energy in his step, as if he was genuinely excited to compete rather than obligated. When the two fighters finally stood face to face during final instructions from the referee, the moment captured the hearts of millions watching worldwide. Instead of the usual stare-down tensions, they nodded respectfully to each other. Mario even smiled slightly and whispered something that made Manny nod approvingly. Commentators noted this was unlike any pre-fight moment they had witnessed in the modern boxing era. The opening bell brought immediate intensity that surprised even skeptics. Both fighters came out throwing powerful combinations, demonstrating that mutual respect hadn't diminished their desire to win. Mario showed improved footwork and defense that trainers attributed to the mental clarity he had found since Manny's visit. Every punch was placed with precision, every movement calculated and purposeful. Manny, meanwhile, displayed vintage form that reminded observers why he was considered one of the greatest fighters ever. His combinations were crisp, his movement fluid, and his ring IQ evident in every exchange. But more importantly, he fought with joy that had been missing from recent performances. He wasn't just trying to win. He was trying to give fans and his opponent an exhibition of boxing at its finest. By the middle rounds, it became clear that both fighters were bringing out the best in each other. Mario pushed Manny to dig deep and show flashes of his legendary speed and power. Manny challenged Mario to elevate his technical skills and fight smartly rather than recklessly. Each round was competitive, with both men having moments of success and neither backing down from the challenges presented. Between rounds, cameras caught moments that spoke volumes about the changed dynamic. When Mario went back to his corner after a hard round, he wasn't frustrated or angry despite falling behind on the scorecards. Instead, he seemed determined to implement the adjustments his team suggested. Similarly, Manny showed patience and calculation that came from fighting not with desperation, but with confidence in his preparation and respect for his opponent's abilities. As the fight progressed into the championship rounds, the crowd was treated to a demonstration of boxing artistry that transcended the typical win-lose mentality. Both fighters were clearly pushing each other to the best performances of their careers, creating moments of pure boxing beauty that reminded everyone why the sport had captivated humans for centuries. The fight had become about more than victory. It was about two men honoring the craft they both loved through excellence in execution. When the final bell rang after 12 intense rounds, both fighters embraced in the center of the ring with genuine warmth. The crowd rose for a standing ovation, not just for the exciting fight they had witnessed, but for the demonstration of sportsmanship that had elevated the entire event. Mario held Manny's hand raised, acknowledging the veteran's superior experience, while Manny gestured for Mario to recognize the young fighter's incredible performance. The judge's decision, when finally announced, gave the fight to Manny by split decision, a close result that reflected the competitive nature of the contest. But in an unprecedented display, Mario was first to congratulate the winner, embracing Manny and whispering something that made the Filipino smile broadly. Post-fight interviews revealed that Mario had told Manny he was honored to have shared the ring with him, and that the defeat felt less like a loss than like graduation from a masterclass in boxing excellence. Manny's post-fight speech surprised everyone when he spent more time praising Mario than celebrating his own victory. He spoke about how Mario had reminded him why he fell in love with boxing originally, and how their mutual respect had brought out the best in both fighters. He announced that he wanted to continue mentoring Mario and other young fighters, seeing role model responsibilities as more important than adding more titles to his collection. Days after the fight, both fighters' lives changed in unexpected ways. Mario found himself fielding offers not just for boxing matches, but for sponsorships and opportunities that valued his demonstrated character as much as his fighting ability. Companies wanted to associate with a fighter who showed that toughness and kindness weren't mutually exclusive, that respect for opponents could coexist with fierce competition. Manny, meanwhile, discovered renewed purpose in his boxing career. He announced plans for a boxing foundation that would pair experienced fighters with younger ones, creating mentorship opportunities that went beyond just training. He spoke about how his encounter with Mario had shown him that his greatest legacy might not be his titles, but his impact on the next generation of fighters. Media coverage of the fight and its aftermath was unlike anything boxing journalism had seen in the modern era. Sports writers found themselves discussing the philosophy of competition, the value of mentorship, and the possibility of transforming boxing culture. Many noted that the fight proved excellence and sportsmanship could coexist, that mutual respect between competitors could enhance rather than diminish the quality of performance. International boxing organizations took notice of the positive response to the fight's approach. Several governing bodies announced plans to incorporate sportsmanship awards and mentorship programs into their championship protocols. What had started as Manny's personal approach to a single opponent had begun changing conversations about how the sport should be conducted at the highest levels. Most significantly, both fighters reported feeling more satisfied with this fight than with many previous victories. Mario spoke about the sensation of belonging to something larger than himself, while Manny expressed that helping Mario had given him more joy than winning another title. They had discovered that true victory in boxing could be measured not just by the scorecard, but by the positive impact on people around them. Their story became inspiration for fighters across all levels of the sport. Young boxers began seeking out mentorship opportunities rather than just tough competition. Veterans started seeing the development of the next generation as part of their responsibility, not just personal achievement. Manny's shocking warning had ultimately transformed not just two careers, but began shifting the culture of the entire sport toward a more positive and sustainable approach to competition. 1 year after the historic fight, the repercussions of the meeting between Manny Pacquiao and Mario Barrios continued to expand throughout the boxing world. The Champions Mentorship Project, launched by Manny, had connected more than 100 veteran fighters with young talents around the world, creating a support network that went far beyond technical training. Mario Barrios, now himself mentor to 3 young fighters from San Antonio, was frequently invited to speak about how respect and healthy competition could coexist. The friendship between the two men deepened significantly. Mario regularly visited the Philippines, participating in community events and youth development programs that Manny organized. During these visits, he learned about Filipino culture and how Manny had used his platform to benefit his people. This experience inspired Mario to create similar programs in his San Antonio community, focusing especially on young Latinos facing socio-economic challenges. The collaborative book they wrote together, Respect in the Ring, A New Philosophy of Competition, became a bestseller not only among boxing fans but was also adopted by educational programs and sports organizations. The book detailed their personal journeys, the transformative pre-fight meeting, and how they developed a philosophy that saw competition as an opportunity for mutual growth instead of opponent destruction. The influence of their approach extended far beyond boxing. Other sports began implementing programs based on their methods, emphasizing mutual respect between competitors. Universities offered courses on ethical competition, using their relationship as the main case study. Sports psychologists cited their model as an example of how elite athletes could maintain competitive intensity while preserving humanity. Mario had become an important cultural bridge between Latino and Filipino American communities, organizing events that celebrated both cultures. His Bridges Through Boxing Foundation offered scholarships for young people of diverse ethnicities to train together, promoting intercultural understanding through sports. Manny frequently appeared as a special guest, sharing stories about how diversity enriched the boxing world. 3 years after the fight, both announced they would retire from active boxing to dedicate themselves entirely to community work and mentorship. Their final fight, a charity exhibition at a joint event in the Philippines and Texas, raised millions for their respective foundations. The emotional farewell showed two men who had found purpose greater than individual titles, the legacy of transforming lives through sport. The training center they established together in Las Vegas became a world model for fighter development. Unlike traditional gyms focused only on victories, this center emphasized character development, community responsibility, and leadership. Graduates of the program were known not just as technically superior fighters, but as individuals who exemplified the sport's highest values. 10 years later, when asked about their greatest achievement in boxing, neither Manny nor Mario mentioned titles or records. Both spoke about how many young people they had inspired to see competition as an opportunity for personal growth and positive impact on society. Manny's shocking warning had become a global movement that redefined what it meant to be a true champion. The fight between Manny Pacquiao and Mario Barrios entered history not for the punches exchanged, but for the demonstration that the highest level of competition could coexist with profound human respect. They proved that true warriors in the ring could be even better humanitarians outside it, establishing a standard that would inspire future generations of athletes to see their talents as responsibility to elevate others, not just for self-promotion. Their legacy lives on whenever two competitors choose respect over artificial rivalry, whenever veterans invest time in developing newcomers, and whenever athletes use their platforms to build bridges instead of creating divisions. Manny's warning to Mario had become an eternal lesson, that true victory in sport comes not from defeating opponents, but from elevating the entire sporting community through personal example and altruistic dedication. If you like this kind of story, leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on the next videos.